Welcome everyone to another edition of Willow's Weather Briefing. Today is Friday, June 27th, 2025. The intense heat across the east is mostly over, but our focus is going to shift towards the Midwestern states as a severe weather sequence is poised to affect the northern plains and then migrate east throughout the next few days. This will be associated with various frontal systems moving across the eastern U.S., bringing us an unsettled pattern across the east as we move into the weekend through early next week. Today, we are expecting large to giant hail, damaging to destructive winds, and a few tornadoes across the Dakotas and the Nebraska Sandhills, as well as some scattered damaging winds across the eastern U.S. We are also expecting some flooding across the central Appalachians to the Allegheny Plateau with a backdoor cold front. Above average temperatures for the northern and central plains, as well as the Ohio Valley and lower Appalachians. Below average temperatures for the Pacific Northwest, upper Great Lakes, and Delmarva vicinity. What you're seeing right here is one of the few tornadoes we had yesterday around Luverne, Iowa. This is in northern Iowa, courtesy of Edson Carroll on Facebook. And then here is some tornado damage courtesy of a local news station there in southern Minnesota. So here is our storm reports from yesterday. We have some tornado reports. That was the first video you saw here in northern Iowa. And there was another tornado down here near Albert Lee, Minnesota, in southern Minnesota. Otherwise, we have some flash flooding reports throughout the Appalachians into the Allegheny Plateau, as well as some scattered damaging wind reports across the eastern U.S. Here is our drought monitor map. These solid lines demarcate the areas of greatest concern with drought. Pause the video if you would like to take a closer look at that. And here is our current watches and warnings. We still have heat advisories across the eastern U.S., so still quite above average heat for these portions of the U.S. We also have some flood watches here around the Trans-Pecos region over to southeastern New Mexico, and some extreme heat warnings in effect here in southern Arizona. Here is a look at our surface fronts and sea level pressures. We have a low pressure system moving its way across the upper Midwest right now. That is going to make its way into Canada, into the Canadian Shield, and eventually into Quebec, Canada, moving a cold front and unsettled weather across the Great Lakes regions. But by the weekend, we should see another low pressure system form over here in the Canadian prairies and then slowly slump its way down, bringing a cold front and much more unsettled weather into the Midwest Ohio Valley and eventually into the northeastern regions. This will bring some unsettled weather for most of these areas by the end of the weekend into early next week. Here is our excessive rainfall outlook, broad marginal risks for a lot of the U.S., but our primary focus for excessive rainfall is going to be here in central Appalachia towards the Allegheny Plateau. This is due to a incoming backdoor cold front and also increased moisture flux into this region. Over here, we do expect rainfall up to 3 inches or above localized amounts in these regions. Day 2 excessive rainfall outlook. We still have some marginal risks out here for the upper Midwest associated with that cold front moving through, and we also have some marginal risks of excessive rainfall for the Northeast. Day 3, that cold front begins to continue off to the east, as well as that secondary low pressure system forming and eventually moving off to the east. Here is our fire weather outlook. Elevated fire weather risk here in eastern Idaho and much of southern Wyoming. And we also have a day 2 fire weather outlook here for the Snake River Valley in Idaho. Now, this is going to be our first discussion of some tropical weather here in the Atlantic. We've had pretty unfavorable patterns for tropical development due to some dust off of the Sahara Desert in Africa, but we finally have a tropical disturbance forecasted to move into the Bay of Campeche here in the Gulf of Mexico / America. This will bring some tropical moisture up into the southwestern U.S., which will help our monsoon season over there, which is why we're forecasting above average precipitation for the southwestern U.S. This will help the influx of moisture move into this region. Here's our day one convective outlook. Slight risk of severe weather for the Dakotas into the sandhills of Nebraska, as well as portions of western Minnesota. We also have a slight risk of severe weather in the thumb of Michigan, there near Detroit. This is primarily for all hazards, though I think our biggest concern is going to be large to giant hail and also damaging to destructive winds. Here is our hail outlook. Large to giant hail for threat for Bismarck, Aberdeen, Mandan, North Dakota, Jamestown, North Dakota. We also have destructive winds possible for similar areas, as well as a few tornadoes possible in the Dakotas region, specifically for Bismarck, North Dakota, Pierre, South Dakota. Looking at our day two outlook, slight risk of severe weather for most of eastern South Dakota into Minnesota and portions of Nebraska, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. This is primarily for a damaging wind threat over here. Portions of this region could see large hail as well, especially early on when we have a more discrete mode. And also, a tornado or two is possible tomorrow as well. Looking at day three, we have a slight risk of severe weather for central Wisconsin into the UP of Michigan. I anticipate that this is also going to be primarily for a damaging wind threat. And here is our heat risk outlook. Definitely looking less robust today than the past few days. We do have that breakdown of the ridge helping out with the heat here, but there are still some pockets of well above average temperatures, especially here near the Ohio River Valley and lower Great Lakes region, and also the mid-Atlantic. Moving forward, we do have some heat building over here in the western U.S. for portions of Arizona and southern Washington. Let's take a look at Phoenix, Arizona. Could reach again as high as the mid 110s by early next week. And also portions of southeastern Washington could reach above 100 degrees. We do still have some heat upcoming for the eastern U.S., but not nearly as prolific as before. Temperatures reaching into the low 90s for most of these areas, possibly mid 90s down here in the mid-Atlantic. And by next week, we have the cold front sweeping through the eastern U.S., which should bring our temperatures moderated down towards a normal or perhaps below normal. Here is our extended range hazards outlook. Mostly hazardous heat in terms of the story here. Southeastern Washington, mainly areas that we just highlighted. Southeastern Washington, southern Arizona, Midwest, and Mid-Atlantic. Some areas of heavy rain possible associated with some tropical moisture over here in the Gulf Coast and also here in the southwestern U.S. with that monsoonal moisture. Here's our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, July 2nd through 6th. Above average temperatures for the northwestern United States and southeastern United States, below average temperatures for the southwestern U.S. Here's our 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, above average associated with that monsoonal moisture coming in here in the southwest. Otherwise, pretty close to normal for most of the rest of the United States. And finally, looking at our href paintball output, this is what we use to get an idea on the timing of our storms. So moving into the afternoon, as usual, we do see a reinvigoration of convection here in the plains. It looks like The models want to grow upscale fairly quickly, so perhaps we'll have a quick shot at the hazards such as large to giant hail, but some models have cells remaining a bit more discrete. So storm mode is going to be an important evolution. Perhaps we'll see a few cores of updrafts that will drop some large to giant hail throughout, or perhaps the hail threat will be a little bit more short-lived. The storms will start to fire at around 21Z. This is around 4 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Mountain. And we'll see those storms slowly migrating eastward with time. And we'll definitely see the storms grow upscale by around 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain. And then the threat will modulate more towards damaging winds. Tornado threat is, of course, to be maximized when these cells remain discrete. That is going to be it for today. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Of course, if you want any specific information regarding your area, please refer to your local National Weather Service or broadcast meteorologists. Thank you and have a great day.